Literally, I was actively dying. My doctors told my family that I wasn't going to survive, and so my family came into town.
Holy shit.
Yeah, this is when I was 25 years old. Kept getting more and more sick, and so at a certain point, my family had a priest come in the room and read me my last rites because they were sure that I wasn't going to make it. And when the doctors looked at it, they said, "We don't think this is lymphoma. We think it's something called idiopathic multicentric Castleman disease. Basically, it's a disease where your immune system attacks your organs until you die. Maybe this could kill you." And I said, "Well, but
You're already dying.
I've almost died 5 times and I'm out of options." And so he prescribed it. Shawn, it's now been over 11 and a half years. I've been doing great on this drug. First hospitalized, within a couple of days I was in the ICU. I had a retinal hemorrhage that made me temporarily blind in my left eye. Its vision's back. I needed daily transfusions to keep me alive. I was on something called dialysis because my kidneys weren't working, and like literally I was actively dying. I mean, everything was shutting down. I was actively dying, and we didn't know what it was. Like the doctors were like, "We don't know what this is. Like maybe it's an autoimmune disease, maybe it's lymphoma, a form of cancer, but like whatever it is, we got to figure this thing out really quickly because it was killing me." And I got more and more sick, so sick that my doctors told my family that I wasn't going to survive. And so my family came into town, my best friends came into town, like literally one by one marched in. We snot cried, we hugged. I said everything that I ever wanted to say to them. They said goodbye to me.
Holy shit.
Yeah, this is when I was 25 years old. And kept getting more and more sick. And so at a certain point, my family had a priest come in the room and read me my last rites because they were sure that I wasn't going to make it. And fortunately, right around that time, they did something called a lymph node biopsy where they cut out my lymph nodes because they thought I had cancer of the lymph nodes called lymphoma. And when the doctors looked at it, they said, "We don't think this is lymphoma. We think it's something called idiopathic multicentric Castleman disease," which I was a med student and I'd still never even heard of it before. But basically, it's a disease where your immune system attacks your organs until you die. It just destroys you and kills you. But the only thing they knew to try was chemotherapy. They were like, "Well, if your immune system's trying to kill you, maybe we'll try to kill the immune system with some chemo." And so they gave me chemo in this like sort of last ditch effort right around the time I had my last rites read to me. And it just sort of kicked in just in time, and I survived that. But then I would go on to have a bunch of relapses.
What is it? What's going through your head as a 25-year-old man, knowing that you're being told that you have a terminal illness? I mean, you're saying goodbye to your family. You got a priest reading your last rites. I mean, how do you handle that?
It was.
I think about this all the time. If it were to happen to me, because it's, I mean, these things just that they seem to be more and more. It's like every day.
Yeah.
You know, I hear somebody else. My mom got diagnosed with cancer. My friend, my friends, like all these. It's like every day.
Yep.
You hear somebody else is diagnosed with cancer.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, it was heartbreaking. I was devastated. I had this amazing girlfriend, Caitlin, that I wanted to have a life with. I'd made this promise to my mom. I was going to treat all these patients and I was going to discover all these treatments. I wasn't going to be able to follow through on. I just felt like there was just so much that I was never going to experience that I wanted to so badly. And, you know, I didn't have any regrets about what I did in life, but I just had this like feeling of regret about things I never would get to do or that I never got to do. And I was just heartbroken. But, you know, I think that I ended up spending about 6 months in the hospital in critical condition. And I think about, you know, some of the things that you've gone through as a soldier and sort of just like fighting, you know, one day at a time. And I think that there's 3 things that helped me to get through those 6 months of survival. And I'd love to hear if you've thought about these in the same way. But for me, it was like, for the entire 6 months, I kept thinking about what I wanted for my future, which I kept visualizing like a family with Caitlin. I kept visualizing like me in the lab trying to find drugs for patients. I had to have this vision for what I was fighting for. So that was the first thing. The second is that I had this like amazing support group around me. My dad, my sisters, Caitlin, like they were literally holding my hand, like giving me strength. Like I could feel their strength from the way they were holding my hands, from their voices, like that gave me strength. And then the third thing is that, it really was this, like, it's this cliche of like one step at a time or like one breath at a time. But for me, it really was one breath at a time. Like if you told me at the beginning of this 6 months, like, David, you're going to suffer the most horrible pain for the next 6 months. Every breath you take is going to be horrible. I gained 100 pounds of fluid. Like you're just going to be in constant agony while your organs are being destroyed by your immune system. There's no way I could have been like, I can do this for 6 months. But I knew I could do it for like an hour. And then like, all right, I can do it for an hour. Maybe I can do it for 2 hours. And then those hours just started stacking up to, all right, I did it for a day. Like I can keep doing this as long as I've got my family around. I couldn't have done it if I was on my own, but as long as I've got them supporting me, I can do this. And all of a sudden they stacked up and then I made it through.
Did you ever come to acceptance?
Well, I don't know if I would say acceptance, but there was one point where I was ready to give up, where I started slowing down my breathing, and my family was around me, and my sister Gina was holding my hand, and everyone was, saying goodbye. I just had my last rites read to me, and it hurt so bad to take every breath, and it was just like I was fighting. And then I started to slow down, and I was gonna let go, and I heard my sister Gina, and I can picture it, I can hear it, and she said, "Just breathe, Dave, just breathe." And I heard that, I was like, all right, I can do this. I can do another breath. And I was like, I'm not going to slow down. Like, but in my mind, when I was slowing down my breathing and letting go, I was expecting that I was going to be letting go maybe a couple of days of life early. Maybe it's a day of life that a day of suffering basically that I was going to be sort of letting go. Like you said, Wendy, she was fighting. Like you can fight for survival. There's that when you're at the end, you can keep fighting or you can let go. Mm-hmm. And I was going to let go. I was ready to let go. But when she said, "Just breathe, Dave, just breathe," I was like, all right, I can do that. I'm going to keep doing a couple more breaths. And Shawn, if I'd let go then, I would have known that I would be here 15 years later sitting here with you. But I took that extra breath. I kept fighting, and then thankfully the chemotherapy kicked in, and I'm sitting here with you 15 years later.
Man, I mean,
yeah. If she hadn't said just breathe, Dave, just breathe, I'm not here.
So it is. I mean, I often think about that. I mean, like I said, when I was just talking about Wendy,
Yep.
maybe your mom.
Yep.
I mean, I think that you can prolong.
You can at the very end.
Death. How does that, from somebody that faced it? I mean, 5 times.
Yep.
I mean, what is it? Just letting go, and then you think it just happens?
That's right. You're fighting. You've got adrenaline. You're like at cortisol. You're like literally giving everything you've got to every breath. You're doing everything you can to stay conscious, to stay there, to keep going. And obviously, I only was sort of prepared to go once, and I sort of let go once, but quickly said, no, I'm going to keep fighting because of my sister. But yeah, with so that was the first one, and then two near-death experiences happened the next few months in that 6-month period, where my doctors again were like, he's not going to make it, and then all the blood work, everything said I wasn't going to make it. But I got more chemo. By the end, they were giving me 7 different chemotherapy drugs, like the worst chemos they have at the highest possible doses, thinking like maybe we can stop this somehow. And thankfully, they would sort of just get me by. But then when I relapsed again a year later, and then relapsed again a year after that, again, both of those times, it wasn't like this is maybe going to be it. It was like, this is it. Like you fought really hard, you made it. But for me, each time my doctors told me that I wasn't going to make it after that first one, I was like, yeah, but you told me I was going to make it last. I'm going to keep fighting. I'm not like, I got this amazing girlfriend, Caitlin. I want to get married to her. I don't care. I don't care if I go shortly. Well, I didn't want to go shortly after I got married to her, but I wanted to get married to her. I wanted to have this family. I wanted to do these things. And so I think that there is a real ability to keep fighting. But of course, for me, the chemotherapy was necessary. It's not like I could have willed myself into doing this. It was that, chemotherapy get my disease under control and I could keep fighting.
Did you think about what would happen after death?
I did. I said a lot of prayers, and I spent so much of that time when I was on my deathbed, sort of sad about the things that I was going to leave behind here, that I spent a lot less time forward looking into what was going to happen afterwards. It was a lot more just, sadness about what was behind me.
Man. Yeah. You'd asked me about, and I haven't gone through anything like that. So I cannot relate.
You've been in battle, and
I just, it was different for me. I feared a lot more than I did back then. I mean, back then I figured I had thought that I had reached the pinnacle of my life. I was a Navy SEAL. Yeah. I was, CIA contractor. Where do I even go from here? I could have gone maybe and tried out for development group, but I mean, it was pretty damn close to the pinnacle. And, and so I just kind of always, if it got hairy, I kind of always considered myself dead already, or I just never really expected to come back from any of those deployments.
Wow.
But I mean, in relation to now, I mean, that was an easy thought. I had brothers and sisters and parents, but I didn't have kids, a wife,
Yep.
nobody on my radar. All I was doing was that. And so I can't really relate, you know what I mean, to what you were going through. I didn't have a fiance. I didn't have, my future was exactly what I was doing at that point in time, which was what I loved. And so it was, if I'm going to go, this is a great way to go. But luckily I made it through. So
Yeah, glad you did.
but you too. But so let's move on.
Yeah, so I make it through that 6-month period somehow, some way, and I got put on an experimental drug, a drug that was going into clinical trials for my disease, my rare disease, this disease called Castleman's, with 1,000 patients diagnosed a year in the U.S., like super rare. And we thought it was going to keep me in remission. So I went back to med school. Caitlin moved down to Philly. We're like living together, and I'm back on track. I'm still leading this grief support network called AMF, but I'm back on track. I'm going to find treatments for patients. I'm going to finish med school. I'm going to take care of patients. And then I started to relapse on that experimental drug. And Shawn, that was so hard mentally and emotionally to go through. Like, this is the drug that's supposed to work. Like, it's working for other patients with my disease. Like, and it just wasn't. I relapsed right through it. Ended up back in the ICU with all my organs shutting down. And mentally to go through that was really, really tough. And my doctor explained to me, this is now for the 4th time, David, you're actively dying. It's unlikely you're going to survive this. And the drug you were just on is the only drug that anyone is working on for your disease. There are no more leads. Like, this is it. The drug you were on that you just relapsed on, this is it. There's nothing else. And I remember my dad and my sisters and Caitlin were around me. And I remember there was like a minute or two of us just like crying our eyes out. Like, this is, this is the world's expert. This doctor is in Little Rock, Arkansas. He's like the world's expert for Castleman's. And I'd gone to see him, just like we were talking about earlier, like, you go to the expert, and he's telling me like, there's nothing else. Like, this is it. We tried everything. And, he said, I'm going to give you the chemotherapy that you got in the past, all 7 of those chemotherapy drugs. I'm going to give them at the highest possible human dose we can give. Let's hope they work. But you're approaching the lifetime maximum of chemotherapy. This one drug called atramycin, we're not going to be able to keep giving you more, and this stuff's going to stop working. So like, you just sort of need me to be prepared for that. And so we were bawling our eyes out. And then when the doctor left the room, something sort of clicked the same way that it clicked with my mom. And that's when I told them that I'm going to dedicate the rest of my life, however long that is, trying to find a treatment for Castleman disease. And I didn't know what that would be. And frankly, I didn't have $1 billion in 10 years to create a new drug, which is about how much time and money it costs if you want to make a brand new drug. So I didn't have the money, I didn't have the time, but I had a really simple and important realization. And that was, those 7 chemotherapies that I kept getting that kept sort of barely saving my life, none of them were made for Castleman disease. They were all made for cancer of the lymph nodes, for lymphoma, but they were saving my life from Castleman. So I was like, well, wait a minute. You're telling me there's no more drugs for Castleman disease, but you just used 7 drugs for lymphoma and those just saved my life. So like, what if there's an 8th drug for lymphoma? Or what if there's a 9th drug for something else that could work for Castleman's? And my doctors were sort of like, well, but there's nothing else that we know of. And I'm like, yeah, but have we tried all 4,000 drugs for Castleman disease? And so that became my just total like locked in focus. It was like, I can't develop a new drug from scratch. I want to get married to Caitlin, have a family. I want to develop drugs and treat patients. Like, I got to find a drug that already exists for something else. And then I got to try it on me. And that became just my total focus.
Where do you start?
So to start, I spent a lot of time just sort of researching online, like, are there any case reports of doctors trying different things? Like it happened in Japan, there was a doctor that was trying these different drugs. And so then when I relapsed and had my 5th deadly flare, I actually started trying those drugs that had been used in other parts of the world. I asked my doctors, would you prescribe this drug? It had been used in Japan, and we tried it and it didn't work at all. And I said, well, can you try this other drug? It was used for a disease like Castleman's, and that drug kind of worked, but I just relapsed right through it. I ended up back in the ICU. And I felt so disappointed because I had spent that year like thinking about what could be tried, and we tried these 2 drugs. But the third thing I had done was that I started storing my blood samples every couple of weeks in the freezer at a lab at UPenn, because my belief was if I relapse, and I thought I probably would, that I needed to get those blood samples so I could figure out what was going wrong, so that way I could target it. I needed to get like basically some evidence to figure out what to go after. And so thankfully I survived that 5th episode again with the 7 chemotherapies. And when I got out of the hospital, and actually even while I was still in the hospital, I turned to my sisters and to Caitlin, and it was like, let's get all the samples we can. All those samples that are in freezers, the lymph nodes that are here and there, get them all to Philly. I'm basically going to go to the lab, and I'm not going to leave until I figure something out. And so got back to Philly, and then I just worked basically day and night running experiments on all those blood samples, started measuring proteins in the blood, measuring what those immune cells were doing. And I eventually identified that a communication line in the immune system, you got all these immune cells all over your body, and they got to communicate with one another. And I discovered that one of those communication lines was turned into overdrive. Sort of like, to me, I thought of it as like, it seems like maybe the fire alarm is going off in my immune system, even when it shouldn't. It's like a false alarm. And so therefore it's attacking everything. And what was really important about that discovery, Shawn, is that there's a drug that's been around for decades that can turn that communication line off. And it was made for organ transplantation. So like if you were to get a kidney, your immune system would attack your that new kidney, that transplanted kidney, unless you took this medicine, which would prevent your immune system from attacking that transplanted kidney. And that drug turns this one communication line off. So I went to my doctor, a doctor in DC, and I was like, hey, would you consider prescribing this? And he's like, well, it's never been done before for Castleman's. Like, it could cause problems. Like, it could turn things in the wrong direction with your immune system. Maybe this could kill you. And I said, well, but I've almost died 5 times and I'm out of options. And so he prescribed it. And so I started taking it, and Shawn, it's now been over 11 and a half years. I've been doing great on this drug. No relapses, just full remission.
Wow. Do you still have to take it?
I take it every day. I took my 3 pills this morning. And, the moment that these drugs or these 3 pills started working for me, Shawn, I immediately have gone into this just total focus and obsession, like, holy shit, like how many other drugs are made for other diseases that could treat more diseases? Like this drug wasn't made for me and it's saving my life. Are there other drugs that are out there that could treat more diseases? And are there people suffering today that could actually benefit from a drug that's already sitting in their CVS?
No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.